Guten Tag, my little nerds. What if one monk's words could shatter the unity of the medieval church? That monk was Martin Luther. Born in 1483 in Eisleben, Germany, Luther was destined for a career in law. But after surviving a violent storm, he vowed to dedicate his life to God and became an Augustinian monk. As he studied the Bible, Luther grew troubled by the corruption he saw in the church, especially the sale of indulgences, where forgiveness was promised in exchange for money. He believed salvation came through faith alone, not through wealth or rituals. And he wanted desperately to call attention to this corruption. So in 1517, Luther took a bold step. He nailed his 95 Theses to the door of the Wittenberg Castle Church, challenging the authority of the Pope. And with that, the Protestant Reformation was born. Okay, yes, there were other factors that led to the Reformation, but we have a time limit, so let's keep moving now. When I say Luther nailed his 95 Theses to the church door, I don't mean he literally used a hammer and nails. That would be weird and also really bad for business. What he means is that he posted them on the door. Posting as in putting up, not posting, as in sharing on social media. Though I suppose you could say he was kind of posting, depending on what you define as posting. Anyway, these 95 Theses were essentially a list of complaints about the church, especially the sale of indulgences. For example, in thesis number 40, Luther wrote, "We should teach that he who gives to the church is not absolved from his guilt by the very fact that he has done so, no matter how much he has given." Basically, don't give money to the church thinking that will get you out of going to hell. Now, most people at the time couldn't read, so they listened to someone else read the theses, then repeated them to others. Others wrote them down and sent copies all over Germany and beyond. And before long, the entire continent was talking about Luther and his ideas. This rapid spread of ideas was made possible by a new invention, the printing press. Now, before the printing press, books were copied by hand, so making multiple copies of something was time-consuming and expensive. But with the printing press, books could be mass-produced. And though it wasn't widely adopted until well into the 16th century, a few forward-thinking publishers had already begun using it. One of those publishers was Johannes Gutenberg, who in 1455 printed the first major book in Europe using movable type, a Latin translation of the Bible. The printing press allowed for the quick and cheap reproduction of texts, which helped spread Luther's ideas like wildfire. And what ideas they were! At the time, the Catholic Church had a near monopoly on religious life in Europe. If you wanted to go to church, you went to a Catholic church. If you wanted to talk to a priest, you went to a Catholic priest. If you wanted to get married, you went to a Catholic priest, and you had to pay him a lot of money. If you wanted to do anything, really, the Catholic Church had a priest for it. But Luther challenged this way of life. He argued that salvation came through faith alone, not through good works or paying the Pope. He also argued that the Bible should be available to everyone in their own language, not just Latin. He even argued that priests shouldn't be allowed to marry. All of these ideas were radical and dangerous, and the church was not happy about them. In 1521, Luther was summoned to appear before the Diet of Worms, a meeting of the Holy Roman Emperor and various princes to discuss grievances against him. When asked to recant his ideas, Luther refused, saying, "Unless I am convicted of heresy by a church council, which I do not admit to be such, I cannot and will not recant." After this, Luther was excommunicated, declared an outlaw, and even offered a reward of 1,000 gold coins for his capture. Yet he continued his work, translating the Bible into German so ordinary people could read it for themselves. Oh, and hey, maybe even write down some of those big fancy words you learned so you can impress your fellow peasants. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more stories of history's boldest voices, including my personal favorite, The Peasants' War. Okay, fine. It's actually more of a cautionary tale, but you'll have to watch to find out why.